most guys live lives of quiet desperation because all they have is bad habits and they don't have the right habits in place that will get them from where they are to that desired promised land of their dreams and goals. And so in this video, I'm gonna cover the step-by-step process of building new, better habits into your life. So get a pen and a paper ready and let's dive right on in. And I'm starting with step number 0, which is you need to have a clear vision for where you want your life to end up. You need to know exactly where you're headed and why you are heading there. And so I'll link below in the description of this video, as well as right on the top right side there, a video that's going to help you figure out what you really should be doing with your life. For the purpose of this video though, know that if you do not know why you're doing the things that you're going to be doing, then you have no chance, my friend. No chance in hell. Because any worthwhile goal that you may set for yourself is gonna require consistency. It's gonna require discipline. It's gonna require you to sacrifice and to put in the hard work. It's not gonna be this magic fairy tale unicorn ride. It will be difficult. It will be grueling at some times, and you will not always feel like doing the work. And so if you do not have a reason strong enough emotionally to keep you going, you will never actually be consistent with the habits you're trying to build. And so go ahead, if that's something you struggle with, if you don't know why you want the things that you want right now, go ahead, go through that video on the top right or below this video. So with that said, let's start the process with the end. And that is, start with your outcome, the desired thing that you want. From there on, we're gonna reverse engineer our way back to this moment, to today. So think about the goal that you have right now. If you have already achieved that, what skills would you have needed to learn? And what daily activities would you have needed to do in order to get there? And maybe what intermediate steps would you have needed to take? So for example, if you want to run a marathon, you would have needed to get your diet in place. You would have needed exercise on a regular basis. And you would have needed to do all of these things, right? And so take your goal, like running a marathon, and work your way back. If your goal is to be a successful business owner, it's gonna require you to learn how to lead other people. It's gonna require you to learn how to do marketing and sales. It's gonna require you to actually create content and create marketing like messages, ads, right? All of these things. And so work your way backwards to today. And then my question to you is, what daily inputs do you need in order to get the output in life that you want? So for example, with running the marathon, it could be an hour of exercise every day. With running a business, it could be creating one piece of content every single day, or multiple pieces for social media, right? So figure out, what do I want to do on a daily basis? What is the activity that's gonna get me the end result? And so when you have that, you have the next problem. Because for example, if you want to get in shape, being in the gym for an hour, that's a pretty huge thing for most people. And so here's the problem I see many people make. And that problem is, people are creating Mount Everest for themselves. Meaning, if you have never set foot in the gym, creating the goal for yourself to every day go to the gym for an hour, that's a huge mountain for you to climb. It's a huge fucking obstacle. And so we need to make our way around that. And the way you do that is to take this huge aspiration of your daily habit, the output that you want to have, and you chunk it down to something smaller. And so what I like to call this is the bare fucking minimum required. And so here's some examples of how this works. Instead of saying, I'm gonna go to the gym for an hour, you say, I'm gonna step foot in the gym. Literally, that's it. Once you set foot in the gym, that's basically your signal that, hey, if you want to, you can turn back and you're done for the day. Because guess what? If you now set foot in the gym, you're gonna look like a fucking idiot if you just turn around and head out the door again. And so maybe you go to the treadmill for 5 minutes and then you're like, you know what? I still have time. I can go to lift weights, for example. And then you do one machine and then it's like, you know what? I still have some energy left. I can go to this other machine. And suddenly setting foot in the gym quietly becomes being in the gym for 30 minutes or 40 minutes or an hour, right? With your bare minimum tasks. Your one and only goal is to get started. That's what I like to call Newton's third law applied to people. Newton's third law says the following. Objects that are in motion tend to want to stay in motion. Objects that are still tend to want to stay still. And so that's the thing. With your habits, your goal is to get in motion. Your goal is to make it so small that there are no excuses possible. And then once you have started, once you set foot in the gym, once you started writing by going for one sentence, now you naturally want to keep going. You will feel that it's 10 times or 100 times easier to keep on going after you did that initial first step. That first step usually is the hardest for people. And so make the barrier to entry as low as possible. So instead of saying to yourself, I'm going to read 50 pages a day, say to yourself, every day I'm going to open my book. Instead of saying to yourself, I'm going to work out for an hour, I'm going to put on my gym clothing and I'm going to step outside of the door. Instead of saying to yourself, I'm going to write an entire article every single day, say to yourself, I'm going to write 2 sentences. Make it so small that there are no excuses possible. So the next step in the process, and actually before I go into that, I'm going to recommend this book right here, Atomic Habits by James Clear. This book in about 250 pages is going to outline the entire process for building new good habits into your life, as well as breaking the bad ones. Or you can just go ahead, subscribe to my channel, because I'll be doing the video on how to break bad habits as well. And that's gonna save you quite a bit of time compared to reading the book. So the next thing I'm gonna talk about is your visual cues. Because here's a fact. Let's say that on your desk or on your living room table, you have a bowl full of cookies. Chances are very big that you will be eating cookies. Whereas at the same time, if you had a bowl of fruit instead, chances are you're going to be eating way more fruit than you do right now. And so that's the thing. Have you ever had this experience when you're in the supermarket and you didn't know you were hungry? You didn't know you were peckish. But then you saw the ice cream section over there. You saw the candy section. And suddenly you look in your cart and it's like, oh my God, I loaded all of this unhealthy food. And so the signal, the cue of even seeing the unhealthy food, that creates the craving for it. And so what you want to do is twofold. On one hand, in order to get rid of your negative habits, it is to make sure that these cues are not widely in your sight. Meaning, if you have the bowl of cookies, for example, on the table, put that bowl away, put it in a cupboard, close it, and preferably just put a lock on it, right? Get it as far out of your sight as possible, and preferably make sure that it's not even in the house. With bad habits, you want to remove the visual and other cues from your environment, and preferably remove the thing itself as well. Make it more difficult to do. For your good habits, what you want to do is you want to make them visible. So for example, if you want to read more, make sure you place your book on the chair that you usually sit in. Place it on top of the remote if you don't want to watch Netflix, but rather read. Your gym clothing. If every day after work you have the routine of just going towards the table, put your gym clothing there on the table, right? Have visual cues set up in place to remind yourself of the habits that you want in your life, and you will be so much more effective at building these habits into your own life. And so for cues, some other ideas would be post-it notes. For example, I got one on basically every door. And that for me is a reminder of, hey, mind your body language. Walk up straight, sit up straight, whatever it is. Just whenever I see that post-it note, which is just blank by the way, I'm like, okay, check my posture. Make sure that I'm sitting up straight and I have this open, confident body language. And that in turn has programmed me to do that whenever I walk through any door. And so that's an example. Another thing that I have is I have alarms randomly on my phone of reminding me I do something productive right now. That can be a cue for you as well. On top of that, you can have like a post-it note on your computer or your mirror with some of the things that you want to be doing. So be loving today. Do the right thing. Get to work, right? Those can be cues that help remind you of the good habits and values that you want to encompass and have in your life. And to take it one step further, with building new habits, make it as easy as possible. So like I shared with you with the example of making the cookie jar just invisible and as far out of sight as possible. Do the opposite with your good habits. If your gym clothing is somewhere in the attic, in a cupboard, behind 3 drawers, that's a lot of steps to take. If it's right there hanging on the front door or the living room door, then it's way easier. And so to give you one example of this, back in the day, like maybe 8 or 10 years ago now, I was working in a brewery. And we had these huge pallets, like taller than I am, full of packaging materials. But sometimes after a certain order was done, there would be like maybe 20 or 30% left. And so those materials would be used the next batch. And so we were supposed to always start with the pallet that was already like halfway down, right? Rather than taking the full pallets. And so at our job, usually it was like shifts of who puts all of the materials ready for use. So there was a certain place where all the materials were lined up and then people could take the pallets that they needed to use. And so what I found was that all of my colleagues would always go for the full pallets first because it was less work. And so in order to stimulate the good habit of taking the empty pallets basically first, was what I did when it was my turn to put all the materials in place, is I would take the full pallets and I would put them all the way in the back. And then in front of them, I would put the like the half pallets basically. And so like clockwork, my coworkers would go for the half pallets first because it was easier. Because if they wanted to get the full pallet in the back, they would have to take the half pallet, put it to the side, then take the little carts for moving them, take out the full pallet, put it aside, then take the half pallet back again, put it back to where it was supposed to be, and then they could take the full pallet away. And so I created friction for the things that people shouldn't be doing, while at the same time making it easier to do the right thing. And so for you, maybe it comes down to just taking out a piece of paper and a pen to brainstorm some ideas of how you can make your desired actions, your desired habits easier to do, easier to start with, and easier to accomplish. And as you do that, with every barrier you just knock out of the way, you make it more likely that you're gonna get the new habit and stick with it. Next up in the process is to make it rewarding for you to do the right things, to implement your new habits. And so that comes down to positive reinforcement. And you can do that basically in a few ways. And there's one in particular I'm gonna recommend. So one way in which you can do this is to tell yourself like, hey, after I went to the gym, I can have this bowl of chips. After I write an article, I can watch my show on Netflix. And so attaching a reward to it can help make it easier to do and to turn something into a habit. The danger of this that I'm gonna warn you against is if you attach a reward, something physical, to your habit. Then your mind's gonna be like, wait a minute, I've got the activity that I don't really want to do over here. I've got the reward that I want over here. So why don't I take this activity and throw it out of the window and just go straight for the reward over here? And so that's something that kept me stuck as well for some time, where I tried attaching a reward to my habit and my mind just skipped the activity and went straight for the reward instead. And so my recommendation for creating positive reinforcement is to link activity and reward in the future. And this is because of something that we call the present bias. And so your mind, it gives way more value to everything in the present moment while it discounts things in the future. If we would evaluate things like honestly, maybe the amount of exercise, the pain is gonna be like this, but getting in shape is gonna be this in terms of rewards, right? And so objectively looking at it, we're gonna say, you know what? Working out is worth it. But now the present bias kicks in, emphasizes the present moment. So if there's any quote unquote pain right now, your mind exaggerates and makes that bigger. So this amount of pain, because of the effort required, your mind says it's like this. In the meantime, things in the future are discounted. So this amount of, reward, the benefits for your life, gets diminished. And now you see a problem. Now your mind looks at it and it's like, mountain of effort, mountain of pain, a little bit of reward. And so in order to get around that, you want to make the time frame between when you get the reward and when you do the activity as close to each other as possible. And so something that really works for me as well with this, that I'm going to recommend you implement as well, is to again link your activity with the reward. So when I'm done working out, I literally just applaud myself, I cheer myself on, like, yeah, I fucking worked out. And this helps me to get in the best shape of my life. And so what you're doing here is you're creating a reward cycle where you link activity to reward in the future so that dopamine gets released from this. It triggers your reward center of the brain and it makes it more likely that you're going to repeat the same behavior over and over and over again. Because evolutionarily speaking, what gets reinforced positively gets repeated. And so if as a caveman you found a new tree with apples, you're like, food, good thing, brain gives off dopamine, and the next time you leave your village, you get reminded of that tree, and your mind basically makes the connection of like, hey, go from village to tree, get the apple. And so when you link your activity mentally to the reward in the future, what you're doing is you're creating that stimulation of like, hey, repeat this process because there's a good thing happening. And so as you do that, as you implement that positive reinforcement for yourself, you will be way more likely to repeat your new habit so that it becomes something that is part of who you are rather than something that you just do once or twice. That's when it actually becomes a habit. And so what I want to do before I round up this video is I'm going to give you two ways that are external, that are gonna make it so that it's almost impossible for you not to take action. And before I go into that, if you haven't already, go below this video, click on the subscribe button, enable notifications, and while you're at it, give this video a quick thumbs up. And so the two ways in order to make sure that you stick with your good habits are people and consequences. And so the first thing is accountability. So for example, if you have a goal of, getting in shape or maybe running a marathon, whatever it is, right? Sign yourself up months in advance. And then tell everyone you know and care about, hey, in October, I'm gonna run this marathon. Would you like to come cheer me on? Guess what happens now? If you don't train, you're not gonna be able to run the marathon. If you're not going to be able to run the marathon, you're going to have to call everyone of like, hey, this marathon you are going to come support me for. Yeah, sorry, I'm not running. Like, I didn't train enough. And you have to give some bullshit excuse. You have to weasel your way out of it. And that in turn is painful. And so because of that, it's basically like you're checkmating yourself into doing it. So if you go on a diet and then 2 weeks later, someone asks you, hey, how's the diet going? And you tell them, oh yeah, that, I already quit it. You are gonna look like a fucking fool. And you don't want that. Like, that's painful to your mind. Because fitting in is something that we're evolutionarily equipped with. Because back in the day, if you didn't fit in with the group, if you were cast out, you would most likely die. Which is why this social pressure is so powerful. So when you have a goal, share it with the people around you. Tell them exactly what you're going to do, why you're going to do it, and tell them, hey, just check in with me. Remind me of this. Keep me accountable. And if they're good friends, they will be honest with you of like, hey, step up your fucking game, man. Step it up. Man up. You can do this. Right? So that's the first way of making sure that you actually have no choice except for you to do the right thing. The second thing is stakes. So one thing, I was watching this video the other day where someone shared a brilliant idea. This guy wanted to be more social. And so what he did on a party, on a night out, he gave $200 to a friend of his. And he told him, hey, every time I talk to a new person that I don't know, you give me back $20. And so now there is something on the line. That's the thing. If you are sitting at home, nobody knows about what you want to do. Nobody knows what your goals are except for you. And there are no consequences if you don't do it. Then it's going to be very difficult for you. You're going to have to require on your willpower, on your discipline, and really on the reasons why you want this. Which is why I started off with knowing, why do you want to achieve the things that you say you want to achieve? Because if your reasons aren't good enough, in that scenario, you will fail. You have set yourself up for failure. And so with this, get other people involved and have something on the line that is proportionate to both your own wealth as well as to the goal. So if you're a millionaire and you give $200 to someone and to hold you accountable, that's not going to work very well. In that example, give 200K to someone and watch yourself do it. Right? If there's enough on the line, you will do things that you otherwise maybe wouldn't do. And so it's a very powerful lever. The one thing I'm going to say about this is that it shouldn't be your primal focus. There should be emotional, internal reasons that are strong enough for you to overcome the setbacks, that are strong enough for you to do it anyway. But if you find yourself like incapable of actually putting in the work, if you find yourself procrastinating, if you find yourself self-sabotaging, On one hand, you want to implement accountability as well as stakes. And on the other hand, you want to dive internally into your beliefs, into the things that really mentally hold you back. But that is a topic for a completely different video. Otherwise, I'm gonna be talking to you for another half hour. I don't want that for this. And so realize that these two factors can put so much leverage onto you to do the right thing. And then once you have a habit in place, once it's going on for a while, now it becomes easier and easier and easier. Just like the more you put yourself through hardship, the more you train yourself to be disciplined, the easier it becomes. It's just like fucking arm muscles. The more you exercise it, the more you exercise being disciplined, the more you exercise not wanting to do one thing, but doing it anyway, the easier it becomes the next time. And so I know this has been a long video. I hope you liked it, but this is the process in which you can build new good habits into your life. And so the one thing I'm gonna ask you, if you like this, give the video a quick thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, because I'll be bringing you more videos that will help you bring your life to that next level. And I'll see you in the next video.